My name is Caitlin Corrigan, and I am the Executive Director at the Institute for Ethics and Artificial Intelligence at the Technical University of Munich here in Germany. And I have the great pleasure to open up our event today from the Responsible AI Network Africa, which is an initiative of many, many partners now, but was originally a partnership between TUM and Munich and KNUST in Ghana. Today, we're going to present on responsible AI applications in Africa. This is our first event of 2022, and we're very excited about it. And I'd like to welcome now Jerry Poyo as our moderator. Jerry is the head of Quality Assurance and Planning Unit for KNUST in Ghana. He's co-founder of the Responsible AI Network Africa, and also a member of the Global AI Ethics Consortium, which we also help organize here at TUM. He's also the director of the new Responsible AI Lab at KNUST, which we were very excited to hear about, and we'll be excited to hear about its work in the future. He's a member of the Ghana Institution of Engineers, and he's also currently a coordinator of West African Sustainable Engineering Network for Development. So Jerry, I turn it over to you to welcome our panelists for today. Thank you all.
Okay. Thank you so much, Caitlin, for that introduction, and welcome to each and every one of you to the Responsible AI Network Africa workshop. Today, we are having our first workshop for the year. We have our first workshop for the year, and we will have 3 of our colleagues share their experiences as far as responsible AI is concerned. From the University of Makerere, we will have Dr. Rose Nikibuule. Rose is an assistant lecturer in the Department of Computer Science at Makerere University. She's a dedicated and capable researcher specializing in the field of AI and data science, specifically machine learning and computer vision. From Rose, we will listen to Dr. Sadouanouan MALO from Université Nazi-Boni, Burkina Faso. Throughout his recent years, Dr. MALO has devoted his time to working on IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and semantic web technologies, and their use in the field of health epidemiology, surveillance, security, and optimal energy management. The last on the bill is engineer Dr. Nunoo-Mensah from KNUST. Dr. Nunoo-Mensah is a professional engineer and a lecturer in the Department of Computer Engineering, KNUST, Ghana. He's interested in research covering wireless sensor networks, intelligent agents, AI for development, blockchain, and the Internet of Things. His research outputs are published in numerous reputable journals and conferences. And let me add that Henry is also with the Responsible Artificial Intelligence Lab at KNUST. At this point, I will invite Dr. Rose Nikibuule from Makerere University, Uganda, to make the first presentation on responsible AI applications in Africa. Over to you, Rose.
So, thank you for the invitation, and welcome to Responsible AI Africa and the applications. So my name is Rose Nikibuule from Makerere University, Uganda. So here in Makerere, our effort, we want to provide or to apply AI to develop solutions which cater for the developing world. So that is the focus of the group. So there are so many projects which are taking place. Especially we are looking at natural language processing, which involves text translation, speech translation, because we are trying to look at one of the UN goals is about communication. And we have a multiple of local languages and people want to understand how the different issues affecting people within our local community. So now the instance, we want to use video data, we want to use radio data, we want to use text data to see how we can get information from all that data so we can use it for planning. We have also been looking at disease diagnosis. This is another area where we want to speed up the diagnosis of disease. We know that specifically we have been looking at malaria. So because here in Uganda, you have a big problem of malaria, and in fact that majority of the people living in the rural areas may find it difficult to access the hospitals. We have limited technician to do the diagnosis, so we want to come up with aiding tool to help the community. Also, we look at crop surveillance, so my talk is going to be limited, concentrate more of the last two, surveillance and traffic monitoring. Uganda being an agricultural country, most of our people are depending on agriculture. But because of the changes in the environment, we have a lot of deforestation, we have a lot of human activities, the environment has been affected. So we find that if people are now getting a lot of pests destroying the crops, we have a lot of pests destroying crops. We have, so we find that a lot of things are going on in agriculture, and we want to make sure that our population still have enough food to take. So now I want to apply the techniques of AI. More especially, we are looking at crop pests, and also we need pollinators. So we find that the agriculture people, they have facing a problem of pests. At the same time, with the layers to improve their yields, they are spraying. And when they do the spray, we destroy the pollinators, because we need sprayers so that we can get better. So we want to design mechanisms to monitor crop pests and also monitor the availability of pollinators. In the case that if I'm going to this plan, I can plan the time, when, and where to display, so that as I'm spraying, I can control the pests without causing much damage to my pollinators. So in this research, we collect data concerning crops. We also did weather information. Then we apply a series of machine learning techniques, which involves data processing, data analysis, and we train a set of machine learning model. And our aim is we want to provide information about crop stroke disease in the crops, so that we want to make sure that our farmers get value for their efforts. We can also try to see how we can preserve our pollinators, because we find that people are using a lot of pesticides, and the timing, the place, and everything, they don't have that information. But if I've got the information about the people, the pollinators, and so we can see how we can spray without really affecting. Also, weather, we need to look at the weather information effects in relation to agriculture or to the timing, whereby we want to understand the dynamics of the crops, the dynamics of the pests, the dynamics of the pollinators, such that we understand when different, the availability of these different pests or pollinators at various times of the year, or depending on the weather. Also, in our set of research, we are looking at trafficking monitoring, because here the major issue, the characteristics of our road networks. The road usage is different from different countries. And when it comes to the developing world, especially like in Uganda, we find that our road network is not segmented. All people, vehicles, they use the same road network. So our aim is to see how can we use machine learning and AI to develop models to help us understand our road network. Also, another thing, how to look at the road network, also privacy. We also, how can we adapt edge devices? Because when we talk about vision, also privacy comes into play. People don't want to be monitored. So the question, how can we use AI models and edge device to help monitor our road networks, at the same time preserving the privacy of the road users? So here we meet at the end of the day, we want to provide insights on the state of the road. We want to provide insights on how much congestion. We want to provide insights on the pollution, because we find that if we look at traffic, also aid in pollution. So information so that the concerned personnel can take collective actions in managing the road infrastructure. And that marks the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rose, for that elaborate presentation. I will encourage colleagues to put your questions down, and then you can ask during the Q&A session. We will move on to the next presenter. MALO will take over, after which we will have a presentation from Henry. So MALO, please. Rose, you can stop sharing so that MALO can take over and do his presentation. MALO, go ahead and share your slides, please. MALO, are you with us? Okay. Henry, okay,
can you see? Can you see it?
No, we can't see your slides. Go ahead and share your slides.
Okay, okay. Okay, can you see my slide?
MALO, we can't see your slides.
Okay.
Okay, let's take Henry, and then we will sort your slides out later.
Okay.
We have to share it for you. We'll do that. So Henry,
Okay,
go ahead.
I'll send you the slide.
Okay, all right. Okay. Henry, go ahead, please.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Okay, yes. So please, can you see my slide?
Henry, we can see your slides. Please go ahead.
Okay. So yes, yeah. So this is going to be the overview of my presentation. Just a brief introduction. Why should AI be responsible, and also certain responsible AI considerations. A typical responsible AI pipeline that we use in our work. And I'll narrow it down to the current work that I'm currently involved in the area of health. And yes, I'll talk about some responsible AI tools that we can also use to vet our solutions. Okay, so so we all know that AI is a field that seeks to create agents that currently do things that human beings are better at, right? So there are numerous fields you have in AI. Some of them, or the predominant ones, you have the natural language processing, the computer vision, right? And these fields can be applied to so many areas. That's health, agri, commerce, industries, and transportation. But the focus of this presentation is mainly towards the health solutions. So that will be the focus, right? So why should AI be responsible? I say that AI needs to be responsible such that we would be able to ensure integrity, ensure equity by respecting individuals, and also being mindful of some social impact of the solutions that we bring on board. And how can we man or safeguard the process that we go through when it comes to AI solution development? Because responsible AI has to do with safeguarding the processes, right? So there are standards, for instance, the ISO 26000, which is on social responsibility, is one key standard that is of essence when it comes to responsible AI. There are also frameworks available that we use to benchmark our responsibleness when it comes to our solutions. We have the facts, we have the fact, the fate, and we also have the facets. Right, and I think facet is a framework being developed by, I think, the AI4D Lab Africa Consortium. So it's something to look out for, yes. And once it's done, once we conform to standards and also adhere to these frameworks, it's possible that the level of adoption and the level of trust that people have in these solutions that we come up with increases. Right. So here, when we talk about responsible AI, these are some considerations that are very key. Your systems or your solution should be fair. There should be accountability. There should be equity. There should be consideration for data and privacy. There should be transparency. It should impact society positively and also impact the environment positively. The final thing is safety with respect to the solution that we are coming up with. Okay, so this is a typical pipeline for all projects that undertake. And you start with the envisioning. The first pipeline is the envisioning stage. And under the envisioning stage, there are some considerations that go on there. The first is to identify the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? So that we can start engagements early, get them on board. Any algorithmic biases the social impact, the environmental impact, and also very important, compliance. So this is where you identify the framework or the standard to even adhere to. So it forms part of envisaging the project. And the next phase is the data phase, where you also ask yourself, the data that is going to come out from this project or this research, is it going to be open data? The data you have, are there issues like biases, invariance, and all that affecting the data? Once you have issues affecting the data, it means that we need to treat it if we want our data to be responsible, our solutions to be responsible. One key aspect with transparency is we need to be transparent, and also check data protection issues by making sure that you conform, the data that you are collecting conform with standards, data protection standards that you have primarily in your country before you move out. Yes, and also when it comes to the transparency, at times you source for information from people, right? So you also need to be straightforward with these people, whether the data that you are collecting will end up being in an open repository or whatever, because some people have reservations when it comes to that aspect. You should be open to them and all that. And at that data stage, through documentation is very, very important, where we try to document everything about the data so that we provide a fair or a level playing field when the data is pushed out there. And the third stage of the pipeline is the model, where the model development happens. So here, these are also questions we ask ourselves or things we try to answer when it comes to the model development. Is it, how reproducible is it? Is the model designed in such a way that it can be reproduced? Also, is the model dependent on certain technology? Because if it's dependent on, or it requires some feature that is tightly coupled to some particular technology which can prevent fairness, it's something that we also try to look at. Then we also look at the parameter tuning in terms of optimal parameter tuning. Documentation here too is also key, because at the end of the day, we want to communicate. And lastly, we look at the carbon footprint considerations. These models or these algorithms that we put together to be able to do that, we need to check how their computation also affects the environment, and reorient the code or adjust the algorithm, right, in order to reduce the impact that we have on the environment, because these things all have some carbon footprints. Or yes. Lastly is the deployment stage, and the deployment stage also there are questions that come up, and some of these questions that come up here either have been answered during the envisioning stage, right? So some of them are the societal impact, the model that you are deploying. Is it going to have an active learning setup? Is the inference that the system is making? Do you have reports on there that you can give to users, and also giving out the confidence score? See, these things have ways of positively encouraging people to accept solutions that are made from these AI models, right? So that's okay. Yeah. So talking about the general pipeline, I just want to narrow down to some of the works I'm currently working on. These are health-related works that I'm doing, not any other stuff, but specifically health. So the first one is the histopathological breast cancer diagnoser, which uses images from breast tissues to be able to detect if someone has cancer or not. Yes, and with examining tissues, it's seen to be the safest and the most precise way of confirming or diagnosing breast cancer patients at the very early stages. So that's why the focus is on the tissue stuff like biopsy and all those things at that time. Then there's also work that I'm involved in that is looking at the assistive video conferencing tools for the hearing and speech impaired. You see that this particular presentation that is ongoing, it's going to be very difficult for people who have speech and hearing impairment to contribute, right? So the solution that is going to come out from this particular research is to enable them to also communicate just as all of us on this call are doing right now effectively. And the third research that I'm involved in is the medical translation of underserved languages in Ghanaian consulting rooms. So with this research, what it hopes to achieve is that we want to bridge the gap, because currently what we have is that most hospitals in rural settings where there's a communication deficit between doctors and patients, they tend to rely on translators, which have can have a very adverse effect on health service or healthcare delivery. So what we intend to do is to take out these translators and replace them with technology or translator, a translation tool that can enhance healthcare delivery. Then finally, the last one is on chronic kidney disease diagnosis. So this also looks at diagnosing kidney diseases based on some biomarkers and all that, right? So that's that. And now to talk about some responsible AI tools that use in the works that we work in. There are some responsible AI toolkits available, but what I'm going to talk about is the Tensorflow responsible AI toolkit. They have so many tools available that can help in the process of trying to come up with responsible solutions. And also one key tool is also the Code Carbon. When we talk about environmental impact, Code Carbon has a very good way of estimating the footprint, the carbon footprint of the codes that we write. And with this, we are able to reorient our codes to make sure that we do not impact the environment negatively. And finally, there's also another tool from scikit-learn, based on scikit-learn, that's the gamma facet, right? It also provides some visualization tools and things that helps in taking or making responsible decisions. Yes. So yes, so thank you very much for your time. I'm open to answer questions that you might have with respect to the kind of work that I'm involved in and also responsible AI in general. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much, Henry, for that fantastic presentation. We'll take the last presentation, after which we'll open the floor for questions. So MALO,
okay.
We'll have Caitlin share MALO's slides and then he'll go ahead and present. MALO, you have the floor, please.
Can you share? Yes. Okay. Okay. I'm waiting for the.
MALO, your slides are being shared.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to participate in this workshop to share our work or our reflections on the use of AI to improve the management of electrical energy. The slide, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Hello, can you hear me? The second slide.
MALO, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. In Burkina Faso, the production and distribution of electricity is provided both by public and private sector companies. For the moment, it is the public use and distribute the large part of the electrical energy. The energy sources and solar energy, but for the moment we do not have the wind turbine. And nowadays, fossil energy remains the most widely used. With the growth of the population, the demand for energy is growing and exceeds the capacity of the companies which produce and distribute the energy. So this contributes, this uncontrolled increase in population make it difficult to predict energy demand. In addition to this, an uncontrolled increase in energy production, which is essentially fuel, increase Burkina Faso carbon footprint. This has led the government to move toward renewable energy, which will complement or replace fossil energy. Our provide AI-based solutions for the optimization of electrical energy management, energy demand prediction models, and renewable energy optimization models. We shall AI and machine learning. AI is said to be the future of the next generation technology. AI finds its usefulness in many fields as can you go back? Can you go back? Please, can you go back? The slides. Who's sharing the slides? Okay. Okay. Well, then, okay. The next. Slide 3. Yes. The third slide.
Hi, MALO. We're having a little trouble because you're so delayed. We're on slide 3 towards an AI-based electrical energy.
The third slide. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The slide 3. Slide 3. I'm on the first slide. Oh, well, okay. Thank you. AI in industry today led to the fourth industrial revolution. The first revolution was steam and the mechanization productions. The second industrial revolution began in the 19th century with the discovery of electricity and assembly line production. The third industrial revolution began in 1970s through partial automation using programmable memory controls and computers. And we are currently in the fourth industrial revolution. It is characterized by application of IC industry 4.0. Industry 4.0 has the potential to deliver examples include machines that can predict breakdowns and trigger maintenance process autonomously, or self-organization logistics that reacts to the next slide. The fourth, slide 4. Okay, slide 4.
Malo, you're delayed. We're on towards an AI-based electrical energy management optimization in Burkina Faso. That's the slide we're on.
Yes, now we can, in this slide, we try to show how AI can help to optimize management. One of the great advantage of AI and machine learning in particular is its ability to predict. So in the energy domain, the main application of AI is the development of methods for forecasting energy consumption using some algorithm like the deep learning algorithm or regression analysis algorithms. By obtaining data on the past energy consumption, for example, historical data of energy consumed by a building over a certain period of time, it is possible for a model to reveal trends and patterns, but also to predict future ones. The main advantages of the energy consumption forecast are economic, practical, or technical. Individuals can convert the amount of energy consumed into monetary value, or therefore estimate the need. In the practical advantage, it's the fact that by knowing not only much energy we will consume, but also how and why we can change our habits without affecting our productivity or quality of life. And the third advantage is that better management of energy data opens up new possibilities of this data, as well as in obtaining more precise forecasts. Okay, we can go ahead. Okay, yes, thank you. We will now see how to use AI as a solution for optimizing electrical energy. One of the great advantages of AI and machine learning in particular is its ability to predict based on, as we said, on the past. The approaches we have identified to optimize electricity are time series and deep learning. Time series forecasting uses techniques such as auto regression, vector regression, etc., to predict energy production based on past observation, and collecting data on weather temperature and other climatic conditions can feed into a model to know in advance if enough renewable energy will be produced to feed it into conventional power grid or switch to renewable energy with sufficient time if necessary. For the deep learning algorithm, deep learning is very useful to the energy industry because the algorithms are suited to large data sets, which in the case of historical energy consumption and production tend to be quite massive and require the appropriate techniques to be processed and analyzed effectively. Okay, in general, to use AI, you have to collect data, choose a model, train it, and deploy it. This is what the diagram here shows. Donc, for our study, for the data collection, we have not me, but the government. The government have deployed smart electricity meters in buildings powered by fossil energy and solar energy. Thanks to these electricity meters, we collected data on the consumption. We also collect users' data. For example, what the users have in their house, which kind of machine they use in their house, etc. Yes. And currently, thanks to users' data, we can characterize them thanks to clustering algorithms. And today, we know in a house which device can consume or which devices are consuming more energy. For the moment, we didn't deploy any algorithm, but we are still tuning some algorithm with a PhD student in Burkina Faso. So for the moment, we are collecting data, and we are studying some models. We also choose some models and we are tuning them, but the deployment is not okay for the moment. Okay. So in conclusion, we are witnessing an increase in energy demand in Burkina Faso and in the world. A perfect symbiosis, we think a perfect symbiosis of AI and the fossil and renewable energy industry will lead to an increase of the yields. And an AI-driven smart grid will help grid operators deliver optimized fossil and renewable energy distribution solution to consumers. Okay, and before taking questions, we think that sustainability is the future, is the key, and future smart grid have to better with less. And to do so, we think renewable energy and AI will be the solution to save our planet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, MALO. I also invite Rose and Henry back. Thank you all for your really interesting presentations. And now we have we have plenty of time here to answer some questions from all of you. I already have one question, a more open question actually to all of you, which was one that was on my mind as well. What are some of the issues identified in the unique African environment that may affect the implementation of responsible AI? I guess the person asking the question said, I guess the speakers can educate us from different perspectives in the different environments you're working in the different applications, health, agriculture, energy, mobility. Is there something that either a gap in the technology that you're working on to fill in terms of what's missing in employing these technologies in the African context, or challenges you face as you're thinking about responsible AI in the environments you're working in? Any of you that'd like to start, would be great.
Okay, so maybe I'll say something. I think a major challenge from my end, my perspective, will be data. Right? It's difficult getting data that is one African origin, right? And particularly interested, or particularly for the region that we work in. So you have to collect data, and that's one key thing. And I think making sure that issues about biases is looked at. Yes, and aside data, one issue would also have to be with the technology, acceptance of technology down here, and the level of technological advancements that we have. You come up with solutions, but these solutions tend to need smartphones to work, but you're in an environment where we have most people using like feature phones, and which are not smart. So you might have to reorient your deployment strategies. Yes, and how to, because you want to make an impact. So making an impact it's about getting to the people that need it. So if the people that need it do not have the tools to receive it, it becomes a problem. Yes. So I think off head, these are the two main challenges from where I sit. Yes.
I was also thinking in terms of the examples you gave, Henry, maybe what I meant by gaps in maybe applications that have been developed in other regions, and then you're talking about, for instance, you had the natural language processing with less used languages, right? So you have to make these tools that maybe were developed somewhere else fit to the population you're trying to serve. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me use the translation use case as an example, right? All the corpus you find out there, you have English corpus, you have French corpus, you have all that. And if you want to do translations, you need some corpora, but we don't have that. Right. So the work that I'm currently working on is focused on Twi, which is one of the local languages we have here. Twi, because Fanti is somehow closely knit with Twi, I might also move to Fanti, but it's supposed to be Twi then Ka. Right? These are languages that we don't have so much data out there. And these are the languages too that are predominantly spoken when you go to a rural settings. And they are the people that are at the very bottom of the health delivery chain, right? So I believe that if we need to get to them, right, we also have to look at the data, source data that is tailored for our use case, yes, which we currently do not have. Yes.
Great. Rose, do you have any thoughts on the challenges faced? Can you hear me, Rose? No? Or MALO, maybe?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Our internet connection is poor here. I think in Burkina Faso, for the energy domain, we really don't have problems with data collection because the government have deployed a lot of electricity, smart electricity meters, so we can have data, we can collect data, and we have data. But we are lacking, we don't have enough students to work on our projects. And the second problem is we don't have a data center. To train our models, we have to go on Google, and to go there, we need internet, and we have internet connection problems here. That's the main problem we have here. I'm also working on, I'm using data on for health, and for that we are collecting data on Twitter and other social media. And as Twitter or Facebook don't need enough internet connections, we can collect data. We don't have really a problem with data, but we have a problem of data centers. And I don't know for the moment how we can solve this problem.
Thanks. I think, Rose, there's a couple of specific questions aimed at your work. So for instance, someone asked, what are the biggest challenges? This relates to the other question, problems of the use of AI in agriculture, specifically in Uganda. What do small farmers need to benefit from this AI in agriculture? And do you see any risks for AI in agriculture in the Ugandan context?
So as my previous discussant, one of the key challenges we have is data. Because we discovered that Uganda is like a cross-the country, find that that's the area where access to data is very, very difficult. So in order to come up with this AI solution, we need data. And also being that we are under-resourced, so also if you get this data, is a lack of computational power, because we find that most of the time we need to rely on cloud computing. So the resources to build these models are also limited. But the biggest challenge is access to the data, where you can access both aggregated data from environment data, farm data. So you need to put in a lot of efforts to get access to this data. And as we know that the quality of the model depends on the quality of the data we have, so there's a lot of efforts needed in getting the data. So when it comes to the small farmers, the most important thing they need is information. Most of them, they want to advise information on what to do at various times of the day. When should they spray? When should they do all the activities concerning? So if they can get that kind of information, then they can be free to move. So when we talk about the bias, of course, from my experience, there's a lot of bias on the adaptation of AI, in that people think they have this fear that AI is going to take away their job, they are going to. So we have that biasness of people adopting the AI because they think there's that thinking that AI is going to replace them in their daily work. So you find that that's also a big risk, and also creates a lot of biasness in the usage of AI.
Thank you. I think we can move over. I see a hand up, so I'll ask Eric if he wants to ask his question directly.
Thank you, Caitlin, for the opportunity. And I'm grateful to all the presenters for the interesting discussions that is going on. And this question goes to all the presenters. They have interesting solutions they are proposing, but my question is, to what extent have they involved the beneficial communities or stakeholders to enhance the adoption of all the applications they are using? I think that one was missing in most of their presentations. So if they could address that for me, the involvement of beneficial communities and stakeholders.
Great, thank you, Eric. Go ahead, Rose.
Yeah, I find that most of this, because like this, the project concerning the farmers' crop pest detection, it was a project which was initiated by stakeholders. We have a group of farmers who are dealing with mangoes, and they are being affected by fruit flies. So you find that we now engage the farmers themselves so that they bring the problem and we try to find a solution. Because as we started, one of reducing the biasness is starting from the person needing the solution. So that is the direction we are taking, that before you embark onto a solution, you first identify the stakeholders and the users. So you start the users, they tell you what is they need, then you can embark onto developing the solution. So we use the user-oriented model.
Okay. I'll take, in Burkina Faso, for example, the problem of energy consumption was posed by the national company that produce and distribute the energy. And now we are working with a student who is working in this company. So they are really implied in the work. And I have a question to Caitlin.
Sure.
Okay. As many people have data problems, what can we, for example, create a network for data sharing?
Yeah, I think I'll go quickly into this, and I'll let Henry have a chance to talk about stakeholders. It's something we've discussed actually in the Responsible AI Network Africa bit. We do have a repository we've created on the RAIN Africa website, and there was discussion back and forth on if there should be links or a place for people to put data so that it's available to others. One of the concern was about how do we validate or certify data quality. And so we didn't know if it was the place of the network to be that certifier, and if we had that capacity, and how we make sure that not only is data made available, but the quality of that data is somehow verifiable, which is something we're still struggling with. If anyone has good ideas for that, please let us know.
Okay. And I think they can use pre-trained models. They just have to tune these models, and I think it can help them.
Great, thank you. Henry, do you have any examples from your work of working with stakeholders?
Okay, yeah. So with the people I work with are mostly in the health sector. So I work closely with the School of Medical Sciences in my university. I have contacts there that I work with. Some validate the data that I have before I even go on to do translation. Right. So, and when it comes to translation too, a key stakeholder that we've engaged, right, is the communications department, and also in my university. So they are helping with the translation. I have contacts there that help with the translation. But with this, we don't really involve patients because initially we during the envisioning stage, we wanted to involve patients, as in go and source for field data, like live field data, but issues of ethical clearance and other ethical issues came in. And that's from the Medical Ethical Review Board. So we quickly had to adjust, right? So you can identify stakeholders to engage, but certain things might come up that might cause your stakeholder makeup to change. Yeah. So as it stands now, yes, these are the stakeholders that I mostly work with. Those in the medical school and also the languages department. Yeah.
Great. I have another follow-up question for you, Henry. Can you further explain what you meant by decoupling from dependence on technology that potentially could bring fairness? Can you give an example of such a scenario?
Okay, fine. So you see that if you have a model, right? Let's say we are in an open world, right? We are just talking about open data where we can put data out there. So you can also have open models where you put models out there, right? So if the models you've trained, right, were heavily dependent on some features, and for instance, this feature can only be sourced from a particular tool, right, manufactured by company A, company B, or whatever, right? That is you limiting how the model can be used. Because if the person doesn't have money to purchase that particular tool to be able to provide that feature, right, it's going to affect how these models can be used. So once you make sure that the features that the model was is based on, right, even with your data collection, right, how you even source for data, once you make sure that it is not heavily dependent on a particular technology, you are encouraging fairness because you are opening the grounds for numerous diverse people to jump onto the solution and yes, make very good use of it. That's what I meant by fairness, yes, with respect to decoupling that from technology, yes.
Great, thanks for that clarification. We can jump over to another hand. I see Peter, if you want to ask us your question directly.
Well, thanks, Kathleen, and thanks to all the speakers. This is Peter from the French Development Agency. It was great listening to all the speakers. I think it's awesome. I was just wondering. So one of the first part is could there be an investment opportunity to finance something? Will you place more emphasis on financing the development of language data sets in Africa? Or will you prefer to have financing in building responsible AI observatories or research collaborations? Like, where will you put weight on based on the experience that you have had? So that's the first part. The second question is actually from our researcher from Burkina Faso, MALO, I guess. Is that he talked about access to data being quite easy. Is it data that can be is it open? Is it something for one-shot analysis? Is it something that can be open to other researchers? I noticed you made mention of deep learning. Like, what was your trained data about? Is it data from the global north? Did you use transfer learning? What was it based on? Just to understand how you went around it. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you. Maybe we can jump over to MALO first and on that second question.
Okay. For the moment, the data is not open, but we can share it in our networks for some people who want to work on for energy consumption prediction. And for the moment, we just use time series analysis, and we are just starting the work. We use for the moment I think time series analysis and what else? And clustering algorithms to classify the users, and it's what we have done for the moment. We are always looking for some other algorithms to tune. We can't create new algorithms. We just use some pre-trained algorithms to tune. Because we really in Burkina Faso, we don't have computing powers, and due to the problems of internet, we can't go to Google every time for the calculations. Yes.
Thanks. And I think maybe the other question was for everyone, which I think is a great question of what would be kind of a best focus for funding to increase the capacity for responsible AI efforts, yeah? More generally. That Rose or Henry maybe have some thoughts as well?
Okay, yeah, so I am thinking, right? Let me borrow a quote from Mandela. It says, if you talk to a man in the language he understands, it goes to his head. But if you talk to a man in the language, his own language, it goes to his heart, right? And with this, I'm supporting language, that we need to invest heavily in languages, specifically African languages, because all other underserved languages, because there are so many innovations that are coming up, but very few of them are tailored to our part of the world, right? That is because of that communication barrier that we have. And I think once funding is available, we should primarily look at language solutions or natural language processing solutions. Then I have this. Secondly, we can also look at collaborations, the partnerships. So firstly, you look at languages, then you look at collaborations, because when you look at collaborations in Africa, I'm using Africa as a case study, right? So in Africa, we have kind of similar problems. So if we are able to come together, we have a network, we are able to fund some collaborative venture, right? What will happen is that we can share solutions. We can yes, increase the impact of solutions that come out of the work that we do in our individual countries. So I think mainly it has to be language promotion. Then we can add partnership to that, yes, or collaborative work to that. Yeah, thank you.
Rose, do you have any thoughts on the funding question?
Yes, I agree with Ari.
Oh yeah, Malo, go ahead.
Yes, I said I agree with Ari.
Okay. Rose, do you have any other thoughts on the funding question of how to promote responsible AI?
I think I agree with the Henry, because as you look at Africa, we have limited resources, especially also when it comes to funding. I think the easiest way to promote is collaboration. Like that, if we can have a collaboration, maybe in terms of data collection, because I said is data which is very important. So if we can have collaborations, and maybe after the collab, we can identify the common language to settle on some language, then you can think about building a university, but through collaboration. I think collaboration will be the best. Like that, through the collaboration, you can get the little funding from different organizations. Because like here in Uganda, most of these projects are funded by either Google, you find either you have Google, you have Amazon, so through those collaborations. So if we can get collaborations amongst ourselves, then we can get a pool, and then we can decide which we can promote the language translation, because languages are also a very big problem. We have different languages, communities within the country speak different, but if we can come up and develop a universal or get a translator, it can be good. But we can do that only through collaboration, because all of us have limited resources.
I have a follow-up question for Rose as well. Someone asked for an example of how we can manage pests on crops with AI, while reducing chemical pesticides. Do you have an example of where AI can help with this, managing pests without pesticides?
I think that we can just reduce, because now with because where we are seeing so many pests within our agriculture is the effect of the environment. We have a lot of environmental degradation, and I've seen a lot of changes in the weather. So you find that when you talk about control, we may not, we can try all other means, but AI can help in providing information on when to spray, on when, but also can help us to advise when we have to use pests, when we have to use the natural method. So AI cannot itself cannot go, but it can help us to provide with information on what to do on the during the different stages. Because if we can use AI to detect development of a pest, then we can advise the farmer what to do. So most cases, the aim is providing information in the timely manner when it's needed, when and where and what to do.
Great.
Okay.
Oh,
Caitlin.
go ahead, Henry. Yeah.
Okay, if I can add to what Rose said, but I believe the question had to do with if pesticide is the only way of combating pests, right?
Yeah. And how AI can help reduce that use of pesticide.
Okay, fine. So I believe it depends on the type of pest you are looking at, right? For you can have instances where you have birds worrying you, and for such a situation, right, you can work with computer vision to be able to identify when birds come onto the field, right? So if you also have some robotic system or some acoustic system in place, right, based on the vision that you are receiving from the AI model, right, the outcome, you can decide to activate some actuators to cause some movements on the field to scare these birds away. Right, so this is also another way that you can work on pests, right, using computer vision primarily. Yeah.
Great. I had another question here, and they mentioned the example of health, but I think it applies to the topic of accountability and AI more generally. Let me grab it. So should AI models have something go wrong with them, right? Malpractice or wrong data used in a clinical setting or a wrong decision made, who should be held responsible? The clinician, the engineer of the AI? Are these things you've thought about at all in the responsible AI pipeline? Maybe then Henry, just to throw on his term he used there, for any of you, but their question was specifically about the healthcare setting, but I think it applies more broadly than that.
So I believe that the one that owns it takes responsibility. So if you created it, you own it, then you're responsible for it. So you need to make sure that you have done all the right considerations. You've tried to block every hole, every loophole that you might eventually face in the field. But you cannot, I think, clear everything 100%, but if anything should happen to the system, yes, the owner or the creator is 100% responsible. Yeah, that's my view.
That's your thing, yeah. It's a hard question people are working on. I have another, unless someone wants to talk about the accountability.
Yeah, but Caitlin, maybe, okay, so if it's a crowdsourced, for instance, you're working with data that was crowdsourced, or it's a solution that is crowdsourced, right?
Yeah.
That one, who owns it? I think that's where the discussion can start getting interesting. But if it's a one-man show, then you can find who is responsible. But if it's a crowdsourced solution, then it becomes difficult pinpointing who is responsible for what.
Yeah, or you have I mean, in the healthcare center, you particularly have probably AI-enabled devices that help doctors to make decisions, maybe, right? Provide them certain data or certain findings that help them make decisions, but the doctor still, in the end, makes the decision, right? So is the doctor still held responsible, even though they were relying on a system that wasn't working correctly? Because they made, I mean, it can get kind of.
Yeah, and I think this, you see, during the envisioning stage, one thing that you also need to consider is the level of automation that you want, right? Do you want complete automation? Do you want semi-automation, right? Where semi would be like the digital twin, the scenario you gave right now, where the doctor is working with the AI solution, right? So the AI solution, based on the parameters that have been provided, would give some information to the doctor. Maybe it might not be definite, it might be alternative options. And it's left to the doctor to decide which of the options is best for the use case based on the explanations or the inference process that the system went through, right? So that is that. But if you decide to do a fully automated system, right, that one, I think depending on the use case, for health, we might mostly be going for a semi-automated system. Yes, that if it has to deal with direct human beings and having effect on on human beings, I think the semi-autonomous system is good. Yes, for information purposes, just to provide information. But the doctors have the ultimate responsibility of taking the final decision. So in this case, they own it. They own the decision, not the AI owning the decision. Yeah, thank you.
Interesting topic. If Rose or MALO have a thought on this, otherwise I'll move over to one of our hands raised. I think Lorraine was up. I'll unmute you, Lorraine.
Can you get me?
Yep, we hear you.
My name is Lorraine Saunyama, and I'm from Zambia. I work on AI and machine learning. My question first goes to Henry. Henry, you're in the health sector. I didn't quite get exactly what you do, but along the conversation, I heard you saying you have removed the patients from your data set. And for me, this looks like it increases the bias as you carry out your work in your sample, because to start with, the patients, I'm sure, are the ones who need your solution, and you have already removed them for the reasons that you are practicing responsible AI. But when you look at responsible AI, mostly you're looking at the biodata. Don't you think if you remove the biodata from the patients, like what is your name, how old are you, such kind of information, and just get the information that you need, will be better for your samples as you use your algorithms, because at the end of the day, you will need to validate those algorithms, because it is not all the time that the algorithms can tell you the correct thing. The algorithms can only give you what your data has given out. So that is my question to you.
Okay, yes, Lauren, thank you for the question. I think, yes, it depends on the use case, right? And then if we are looking at speech, where you are interested in who is talking, right? Either if it's a male, female, yes, it's important, right? Because how males talk, how females talk, they're different. But because of the ethical issues that we had, at first we're looking at conversational stuff. So we wanted to get into the consulting rooms, right? And source for this data. But the ethical issues we had were that it's one is not approved even with consent, because once patients even afford to give us their consent to record whatever is going on for transcription, right? There's that tendency to affect the healthcare delivery, because one, they know that there's something in the room, even though they have signed a consent form where you can take out their names and all that. Yes, but as soon as they get to know that there's something there that is recording them, right, they might still hold on to some vitals. And you see, the reason why we are doing this or coming up with this solution is to impact society. So if as a result of collecting this data, we are going to impact the society negatively based on how the data is being collected and all these ethical issues that are coming up, then we sought to change the approach in doing that, as in sourcing for the data. Because now we are relying on health related websites. So we are sourcing for data from a lot of health related websites, and also health related journals. So journal papers, we've gotten tons of journal papers and all that. And what we are doing is sentence level translations, right? And we are not interested in who is speaking. It's not voice, it's not speech. So we are not interested in who is speaking and who is not speaking. Just the data that we have and how to understand sentences to be able to translate these complete sentences. That's how come we had to change from the normal conversational to the using text, translation based on text. Yes.
Great. We have a few more minutes. I have two questions I'd like to get to in the Q&A. One, since we're all kind of coming from academic settings, is a question of when should we introduce ethics and responsibility in AI into our undergraduate, graduate curriculum courses? Hear from maybe all of you have a thought on when you're doing this or when you think this should be done in.
Okay, but I think introducing ethics should be part of us. It should be from day one till as soon as you talk about AI, it has to be accompanied by ethics. So yeah, that's what I believe in. So yes, the earlier the better. Yes.
Rose and Malo, also any challenges you've faced, in this process of introducing it, reluctance, institutional challenges? Rose or Malo, any thoughts?
I think, I believe when it comes to ethics, I think we should introduce it as early as possible when you start talking about AI. Because especially if you're handling a project where we are involving human beings. Now the ethics and privacy becomes very important things. So I believe at undergraduate, we may need to provide a course on ethics, because these are the young people who are going to go through, and they should understand when they are using AI, they should also have that in mind, that we need to consider ethical issues. Well, we look at ethical issues and also privacy, because some of them may not be dealing with humans, but also they need privacy. So we need to introduce those two concepts as early as possible, maybe at the undergraduate level, so that it becomes part and the part of the course. And you find that when you try to go into AI, responsible AI either in health, you find one of that ethics is a very key issue, whereby people ask, if you get a wrong result, what should we do? So you need to form, because that's why you find that when you're going to talk about health issue involving human beings, we need to, the first thing people try to ask you is to sign an ethical issue. Who is responsible for which data? What should be accessed? What should be? So you find that you need to come up with an ethical or an agreement, a way of handling ethics which arise on the use of the data, on the capturing of the data. So you have to have a roadmap of how to handle each from the point of data collection up to the result.
Great, thank you. MALO, any extra thoughts? Yeah.
Okay. I think something important we can also introduce is explainability, because AI algorithms are still for the moment black box for many people. And for those who are using pre-trained models and so on, sometimes we really don't know what is in this black box, and so I think we must introduce explainability in AI. And in Burkina Faso in particular, we have ethics committees, and if we have to experience some methods on patients, for example, in hospitals, we have to contact these ethics committees that will, yes. So I think, personally, I think what is more important is explainability that we have to introduce when talking about responsible AI.
Great, thank you. So we are quickly running out of time. I'm sorry we aren't getting to everyone's questions. Rose and Henry's email addresses are already in the chat if you want to follow up with them directly about specifics of their projects. MALO, if you're willing to, you could stick your email address in the chat as well. I wanted to end with one question from the speaker, from a person listening, that maybe everyone could speak like one last minute on. And that is coming back to responsible AI and ethical AI. What is the, I'm going to say to keep this shorter, what is the #1 ethical issue that you've encountered in the applications you discussed here today? And is there regulation or other mechanisms that could help alleviate this ethical issue that you're confronting in the examples you used today? So maybe let's start with MALO.
I didn't understand the question.
What is in the examples you used today? So yours were mostly from the use of AI in energy. What is the #1 ethical issue you're confronting? Is it an issue of privacy? Is it an issue of bias? Is it an issue of accountability? And do you think there's any ways to lessen that issue?
For AI and energy, our work is at its beginnings, so we can't have, we don't know the number of ethics, or it's really the beginning for us. Perhaps in AI and health, we have done a lot of works we can share with people. But for the moment, for AI and energy, we are in the beginnings of the work.
Okay, great. Rose, I'll move over to Rose, and any thoughts on the #1 ethical issue you're confronting in your work?
So one of them we talk about traffic, one of them is privacy. Because most of people don't want to be money. If you try to get those images, people are doing different things. So you find that that's why you find that now we are thinking about looking at edge devices, so that when you have those images, we do the computation to the edge, and then you disseminate information. And we only disseminate information on particular incidents when need arises, and to the responsible person. There, the issue of privacy is very, very important. For the agriculture, which is a starting point, we have not encountered a much of consideration, but as we move, we may encounter a lot of ethical issues on maybe how to use the data and who gets the data.
Data access, yeah. Great, thank you. And Henry, maybe your #1 concern at the moment with the applications you're looking at.
Okay, so I think mine would have to be with diversity when it comes to the data, right? Yeah, so data diversity. And how we are solving that, you see, it ties in with Lauren's question she asked, because if we are looking at why not diversify the data if you want to reduce biases and all that, right? So how I'm trying to do that is to change the initial concept or the initial approach that we wanted to use to a newer approach, which is less, let's say, dependent on specifics in terms of the gender of the person, or let's say the skin tone of the person and all that. So we are using now, I'm using solutions that are independent of these issues. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're already over time, so I want to thank our presenters again for this great discussion, and thank you all to the participants for so many questions. I couldn't even get through them all. As I mentioned, Henry and Rose's email addresses are in the chat. You could also contact us at the Responsible AI Network Africa, and we'll get you in touch with Henry and Rose if you need to follow up on some questions about or MALO, of course, about their applications. And the best way to keep up with us is to follow Responsible AI Network Africa on Twitter and LinkedIn, where we're posting about our events and our members' work. And you can get in touch with us there if you want to get more involved. So thank you again to Rose, Henry, and MALO. And I hope you all have a great day. This video will be available later on the RAIN Africa website as well, if you want to come back to it. So
okay, thank you.
Thank you all.